Keith Clouse, I'm one of the tour guides here, and I started out as a volunteer. One of my first jobs here was working with a man named Don Sullivan, who had worked in this area. His stories were phenomenal. Sully had 100 stories. This area was where he worked. Over on the other side here, they had a small garden. In that garden, they grew all their vegetables, tomatoes, lettuce, anything to clean up a bologna sandwich. They would grow these things and then they would sit down there and eat their lunch. But there was a cat that roamed around there. Now the cat had a purpose. That cat kept the river population of rats down to a minimum. But the cat was an accomplished thief. And anytime you set a sandwich down, you had to watch out because the cat would steal the meat immediately. You became an instant vegetarian. Background here is a large gantry crane. My friend Sully was the operator. One afternoon, he was working inside that gantry. That gantry moved all that iron ore that filled this yard, literally hundreds of thousands of tons. He was in charge of keeping all that ore as it was delivered here, stacking it up and managing it to get it into the proper hoppers to be dropped into the furnaces at a later time. One afternoon, he looked and saw there was 2 tool sheds up there. Each one was for a particular worker. One man regarded his tool shed as his own private property. It may say U.S. Steel on those particular tools, but they were his. The other man who was working over there couldn't find a tool. He walked on there and took one of the ones from the number 7 furnace. The number 7 furnace man was irate. He came down, and Sully is up inside that pulpit in the gantry looking down. He sees this is going to be bad. At first it starts out with finger wagging, then hands in the air, then a couple punches thrown. Finally the one man, the number 7, grabs his sledgehammer and swings at the other guy, hits him in the shoulder. He goes down like a sack of potatoes. Sully's horrified. He calls on the phone to the boss. They send an ambulance in. They get the guy up, take him off to the hospital. The police come and they arrest the other man. Now there's going to be a trial. They go in front of the magistrate. Sully's going to be the witness. He describes what he saw. The magistrate's a former steel worker. He's mad. He says, "What?" He looks at the fellow that swung the sledgehammer. He says, "What's wrong with you? That's dangerous. Why would you swing a sledgehammer and hit him in his shoulder?" And the guy says, "Because I miss his freaking head." A friend of mine talked to me about coming down here and maybe we can get some great photographs. On the way, he said, if we did a few things, maybe cut down a tree or two or pulled some shrubs just to earn our keep. Well, that was like Tom Sawyer's, painting this fence is fun. I became further and further involved and became more or less a real passion on my part. Again, I use the word passion a lot. Coming down here and cleaning it up, uncovering it, showing people what this area really looked like. It was a jungle. We made it into a park-like setting that people now are able to understand, to interpret what we have here. One small job led to another and another. And my interest was brought on stronger and stronger by the people I met here. This made me want to do a lot more as I got to know these people. Terrific guys. Characters from the word go. They were reserved and quiet around the public when we had the tours, but you get them into a relaxed setting at a bar. The pictures of beer would start, and so would the stories. They became more and more my best friends. And as I got to know these people and worked on here, it just increased my interest. Then I approached the management of Rivers of Steel about could I be a guide, because I wanted to relay these stories, what was going on in this the whole facility, tell people about it, explain the history, not only how to make iron, but the people who lived here across the river, out on these hills. These people were the fabric that held this community together. And I wanted to relay those stories too, about how they struggled, how they dealt with all the setbacks. This was a cylindrical industry. There was good times and bad times. Their stories of how they survived the bad times were just as well as the particular stories about how they worked here. They were family men. They wanted to work in a dangerous job because it was a good paycheck. And they had their own families in mind. Their kids were not going to work here. Their kids were going to go out and get an education. This man, that man, that man, they were all going to sacrifice to have their children get an opportunity. I was so impressed hearing stories like that. I try to weave those in to the tours that I do. I want to be able to give people the real feelings that these men had for what they were trying to deal with in a really rough, tough life.